I discovered 10 real Dogman attacks that will haunt you forever. I never should have opened that door. The air hit me like a brick wall, cold and heavy. My heart raced as the echoes of my unease surrounded me. There is something out there, lurking in the shadows, and I felt it deep in my bones. Every hair on my body stood up. My normal day turned nightmare in an instant. That I sit here now, in my dimly lit living room. A flickering light holds back the darkness, but it feels like a thin veil. Outside, the wind howls like a restless spirit. I can't shake off the dreadful thoughts creeping in. They've been appearing everywhere: the news, whispered conversations. They call it Dogman. Some say it's just a hoax, something cooked up to scare the faint-hearted. But I know better. I heard the stories, the ones that make your skin crawl. Muffled screams in the woods. Shadows darting between the trees. Eyewitness accounts of an enormous, wolf-like creature, standing upright, fangs glistening in the moonlight. One story stuck with me: a young hiker, lost and alone. She wandered into a thicket, the smell of decay hanging in the air. Just a moment of distraction, and it was upon her. She described the eyes glowing, hungry. Before she could turn to run, a scream shattered the night. Just like that, she vanished. No body, no traces, just a chilling silence. It's more than just a creature. It's a whisper of fear. I can practically hear the rustling of leaves, the low growl echoing deep within the forest. I stumble upon another story: a farmer who woke up to find his livestock torn apart. The ground soaked and stained with something dark. He said he saw it, a figure standing tall, monstrous, disappearing into the shadows before he could grab his rifle. I grimace, the tales twisting in my mind. Each account builds upon the last, creating a web of terror. The air gets thicker, a weight pressing down on me. I listen close, holding my breath. Every creak of the house sends chills racing down my spine. What if it's not just stories? What if it's hunting? I push the thought away, but it's hard. Isolation grips the surroundings. Shadows lengthen and dance along the walls. I can almost hear the whispers of the forgotten, those who faced what's out there. I hear it again: a strange sound, a rustle that chills my insides. I'm not alone. My pulse quickens. I move toward the window, peering into the night. There's a shape moving in the distance. My heart drops. I can't make out what I'm seeing. Just outlines in the darkness. I take a step back, fear tightening my chest. Then, there's a noise. A soft thud, like footsteps drawing closer. No. My breath hitches. I glance back, the door I shut tight suddenly rattles. I don't want to see, I don't want to know. But part of me has to. I reach for the doorknob. It feels cold and slick under my palm. I hesitate, a lump forming in my throat. What if I'm wrong? What if it's not what I imagined? Then again, what if it is? The rattling stops. Silence falls heavy, almost deafening. The world outside feels more real than I can bear. And then, just as I make up my mind, the doorknob twists from the other side. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The doorknob twisted again, slowly, deliberately, as if some unseen hand wanted to make my heart stop from anticipation. My breath caught in my throat, and I took a step back, unable to tear my eyes away from the door. A feeling of deep-seated dread settled in my stomach like a heavy stone. It was as if whatever was on the other side could sense my fear, relishing in the tension it created. That I pressed my back against the wall, wishing fervently for the small comfort of the flickering light that barely illuminated the room. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms, trying to remain silent as the handle finally stilled. A sensation of icy air washed over me, and I felt as if the shadows in the room had grown legs, creeping closer, inching toward me in a predatory glimmer. A soft supernatural growl broke the stillness. My heart raced as the sound seeped into the walls, vibrating through my bones. It was deep and guttural, like the growl of a creature that had no place in this world. I could feel it echoing through the darkness that I didn't dare the temptation to scream. I was afraid if I made a sound, it would come rushing in, dragging me to whatever hell it had risen from. I darted my eyes to the window again, that shape still lurking just beyond the reach of the feeble light. I could see it more clearly now, a grotesque silhouette, its fur matted and dirty, glistening with dew, merging with the night. Then, just as I thought to move away, I saw them eyes glowing like dying embers of an old fire, fixed upon me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. The light outside flickered, and for a brief second, I could see its elongated form standing at the edge of the tree lean, every sinewy muscle taut with anticipation. In that moment, I made a mistake. I let my fear finally spill into a panicked decision as I dashed for the back of the house. I needed to escape. I grabbed my phone, fumbling with sweaty hands, desperately dialing a number. My heart sank as the line rang incessantly. No one would come to my aid. Isolation wrapped around me like a shroud, and in an uncertain fit of resolutions, I bolted toward the back door, praying with every ounce of my being that it remained secure. Suddenly, the sound of nails raking against the wood shattered the silence, the unmistakable thud of something powerful slamming against the front door. I could feel the vibrations pulse through the air, drawing closer, darkening the whole reality around me. My mind raced with frantic thoughts as I pushed down the handle. The door creaked but held, the growl shifted to a more insistent snarl, mingled with whispers that crept through my thoughts, taunting echoes of those who had disappeared. Voices I couldn't understand, pleading, warning, begging me to turn back. I pressed my back against the door, my heart thudding heavily against my chest, but it wasn't just the fear of what was coming. I could feel something else, a compulsion growing inside me, an undeniable urge to open that door and face whatever hunted me. I blinked, trying to clear my mind, and finally turned my eyes to the back window. In the distance, the moon broke free from the veil of clouds, casting an eerie silver edge over everything. My breath caught as I saw movement, another shadow skirting just at the edge of the trees, then another, and it became clear that I wasn't just being stalked. I was surrounded. My phone finally connected, a shaky voice on the other end. "Hello." I barely managed a whisper, "Help, I need help. Something's out there." I barely heard the reply. A sound of rustling from the doorway interrupted, and I turned just in time to see the front door shatter inward, splintering wood and exposing dark figures looming beyond the threshold. An unholy growl erupted. I froze as my body screamed to run, but my feet were locked in place. Then a blinding flash of something fierce shot through the doorway, lunging forward, and everything shattered as darkness enveloped me. And then it all stopped, the world froze, and nothing but a whisper lingered, "It's only just begun." As the darkness receded, I blinked away the blurriness and found myself sprawled on the cold, wooden floor. Confusion enveloped me like the night shadows, but the chilling growls echoed in my mind. My senses recalibrated sluggishly, and every creak of the house stretched my anxiety taut. My mouth tasted of metal, probably blood, but I felt no pain. I sat up, disoriented, fighting against the suffocating terror that pooled in my gut. The room was still dimly lit, the previous surge of light vanished, leaving me with a sickly glow from the dying bulb. I craned my neck, peering into the now desolate entryway, where the massive door had once stood. It lay splintered and battered in pieces on the floor, as if something enormous had torn through it. Hungry for more than just fear, I rose unsteadily, pushing my back against the walls as I moved deeper into the house, my eyes scanning every corner. The silence that filled the space was stifling. Even the heavy breaths I took felt audibly loud against the stillness, like an unwitting alarm that might rouse whatever was out there. Then I heard it, faint yet unmistakable, a low, rhythmic scratching punctuated by a muffled snarl. It seemed to reverberate from below, through the floorboards, and I instinctively crouched, pressing an ear against the wood, hoping against hope that my imagination was spiraling into madness. The sound grew more distinct, almost conversational, as if many forms were murmuring back and forth underground. The hairs on my arms stood on end, each whisper laced with malice that I dashed for the kitchen, my heart racing, as I grabbed a butcher knife, its cold steel somehow offering a flicker of courage. At that moment, I remembered the basements. The previous owner spoke of them 2 levels below the earth, untouched except for the echoes of stories from the neighborhood, tales of vanished pets and shimmering eyes seen in the dark. I bit my lip, trying to anchor my thoughts. I couldn't let that history imprison me with fear. Suddenly, there was a thud in the hallway, and I spun around, eyes wide. My breathing felt like a drum echoing in that fragile silence as the outline of a figure emerged, almost human yet grotesquely disfigured, its limbs contorted, moving with a speed that defied logic. My blood turned to ice as its eyes locked onto mine, flickering golden like molten metal. "What do you want?" I whispered, but my voice hung in the air like broken glass, and my stomach lurched as the thing slowly tilted its head, as if contemplating my existence. Its breath fogged the air between us, reeking of decay, and I fought an overwhelming urge to scream and run. Instead, I took a cautious step back, my knife gripped tightly in my shaking hand. "Stay away!" I shouted, although my voice trembled, betraying my fear. It lunged but skidded to a halt when the ground beneath me groaned, vibrating with distant growls from below. The creature's attention diverted momentarily, its head swiveling back. I seized the chance, heart racing, and bolted towards the basement door hidden behind the kitchen counter. With little time to think, I flung it open and bounded down the creaking steps. The air became thick, suffocating with the smell of wet earth and something more sinister. I felt an intangible push against my back as I descended, an unseen presence urging me to hurry, and I felt the creature's rage erupting above me as it realized I had escaped. That I and the dim glow of my phone's flashlight, I saw the walls decorated with symbols, swirling patterns etched deep into the concrete. My heart sank. The markings mirrored those from the town's urban legends, stories of the Dogman, legends of a curse that bound feral shadows to the earth. As I scanned my surroundings, the growls erupted again, louder now. They were closer, no longer distanced, threading through the dripping sound of something liquid pooling nearby. With a jolt, I turned, the beam of light flickering toward the far corner. Panic surged within me as I saw it, a shifting mass of shadows whispering, eyes reflecting light like a nightmare set free from dreams. It surged forward as I froze, locked in place by sheer terror, and at that moment, I understood it. They were not here for me alone, and just before the darkness engulfed me entirely, I screamed as a chorus of voices converged, chanting a dreadful truth: "You cannot escape us." The pressure in the confined space surged like an impending storm, filling my lungs with a heralded dread. Shadows flickered beneath the beam of my phone's light, twisting into grotesque shapes that danced along the walls. The very air felt alive, charged with a malice that hungered for my heart. I had heard stories. The elders spoke of the basement, the hollow sound of whispers that echoed from hidden pits beneath the floor. But now, standing in the heart of dread, I felt the truth coursing through me as visceral fear. That I stumbled backward as the mass of shadows surged toward me, tendrils weaving and coiling like serpents hungry for prey. I fractured my thoughts, desperately searching for an escape, a way to tear through this nightmare. Before I could steady my breath, the darkness morphed and slithered, forming indistinct faces twisted in agony, mouths wide open as if trapped in some unending wail. Panic clawed at my chest as a low growl radiated from the heart of the shadows. It crescendoed, a terrifying symphony that wrapped around me, pulling tighter with each breath I took. It was a chorus of despair, voices lamenting my arrival, beckoning me into their depths. I willed my legs to move but felt paralyzed by the weight of those trapped souls reaching for me. "Get away from me!" I choked out, the knife slipping from my fingers and falling softly into the viscous pool forming below, swallowed whole by the dark. My heart raced, and I wanted nothing more than to retreat up the stairs, but the growling persisted, surrounding me and drowning out all rational thought. Then silence. The growls quieted, leaving only the whispers. My breath hitched as I heard something shift behind me, slow, deliberate, as if a particularly hungry predator was circling its prey. I whirled to find another creature, its form silhouetted against the fading shaft of my phone's light. It stood closer now, its grotesque body covered in matted fur that glimmered as if adorned with shadows, those molten golden eyes piercing through my soul like a dagger. "Join us," it whispered, its voice grating against the chilling silence, the shriek of rending despair. I stumbled back further, my body rebelling against the commands of my mind to flee. I could feel my heart pounding in rhythm with the throbbing growl of shadows closing in, a terrifying reminder that I was in the lair of something ancient and malevolently powerful. The idea coiled in my mind: what happened to those that entered here? Could they still hear the whispers? Were they forever bound within this wretched place? As if compelled by those very thoughts, the mass surged forward, a whirlwind of horror dragging me into an abyss of despair. Shadows clawed at my legs, their chill seeping through my skin, binding me in their relentless grip. No, no, no. I want to be part of this. I cried, forcing myself prone to the damp ground, where the surface was slick beneath my palms. Struggling, I clawed away from the encroaching darkness, sweat mingling with the damp, and my breath came in frantic gasps, but each inch I managed to gain was met with a wave of shadows following, rushing against my back as I edged toward what felt like a wall of darkness. Every stuttering movement became desperate, the shadows roared in laughter, fueling the terror that coursed through me. I braced myself against whatever lay above, hoping that some solid surface would welcome my trembling body, my last sanctuary. Then, from beneath the weight of the shadows, I heard something: a child's laughter, sweet yet bitter, like honey laced with poison echoing through the chamber. "Help us, please!" it pleaded, although it reverberated with the melancholy of souls lost to time. I turned back toward the darkness, heart racing, searching for the source of that voice. It was then I realized the pit below was a mosaic of bodies, faces hauntingly familiar, their eyes pleading as they reached for me, hands trailing through shadows. From the heart of that swirling vortex of despair, I could see figures emerging, grotesque and writhing, all contorted as they beckoned for my aid. But their faces, dear God, their faces, those were the faces of those who had once inhabited the town, all lost to the curse. My blood ran cold as I understood I was not the first, nor would I be the last. Desperately, I clawed at the floor as the chant returned, echoing in my mind, "Join us, you cannot escape us." Around me, the tendrils thickened, swallowing the entire basement, sealing my fate tighter than a noose as I felt myself pulled deeper into the darkness. Suddenly, the ground beneath quaked, and with a start, I realized my surroundings were shifting. With one last surge of willpower, I screamed against the deafening tide, "I will escape." But just as I felt the darkness crack and begin to wane, a blinding flash tore through the chamber, too bright, too intense. I shielded my eyes, heart pounding painfully in my chest as the shadows recoiled and the whispers transformed into wrathful screams. In that moment, everything began to tremble violently. And then I heard it, a single guttural snarl, echoing with an unholy resonance that chilled my bones, reverberating into a silence that felt apocalyptic. "You don't belong here." The shadows gathered around me, forming a massive creature, and in the middle of that chaos, I realized I was about to witness the true horror that dwelled beneath this house. The creature abruptly lunged forth, eyes gleaming with an unnatural light, illuminating the horrific tapestry of similarity in the faces that surrounded me. For a moment, it felt as if the air itself had conspired with the shadows, rendering me immobile under the weight of dread. I could see bone and sinew weaving together, curves and edges indistinct, a monstrous amalgamation of all that had been lost, of all the spirits I could barely grasp as they shimmered like a dying flame. "Fleeing never allows one to escape," it growled, voice deep and rasping, each word resonating like the tolling of a death knell. The shadows tightened around my wrists and ankles, an iron grip drawing me toward the gaping maw of the beast, where rows of jagged teeth glimmered like tombstones in the dark. I gasped, twisting, struggling to break free, but its presence weighed heavier than despair itself. "I came to help." I screamed, desperation fueling my voice as I clawed at the ground, feeling the earth shift, slick with sweat and terror. "You don't have to be like this." But the creature only tilted its head, those molten eyes now swirling deep pools of malice and sorrow. "Help. It mocked, laughter dripping like venom from its lips, sending tremors through the shadows. There is no help for the damned, child. You merely join us. The words slithered inside my head, burrowing into the crevices of my soul, igniting a flicker of madness. It scrutinized me, and I felt the yearning of countless echoes clawing for my attention, the desperate need for connection. I jerked my gaze away, struggling against the suffocating gloom, and seized upon the fleeting wisp of courage buried beneath layers of terror. It was then that I caught a flash in the corner of my eye, a small shimmer amidst the chaos, a glint of silver from the handle of my knife, half hidden beneath an undulating swirl of shadow. With a primal scream, I lunged for it, the grip of the shadow slackening just enough to allow a frantic escape. My fingers brushed against the cool metal, and a warm surge of hope pulsed through me. I tugged it free, thrusting the blade toward the snarling monstrosity. Get away from me! But the shadows writhed harder, retreating for a mere heartbeat before launching into a frenzied assault. The creature, unfazed, seemed emboldened by my fear. It's futile, it hissed, breath hot with decay. You are ours to command. I struck out with the knife, the blade slicing through the air, barely grazing the surface of its matted fur. The creature recoiled slightly, but its laughter swelled, reverberating off the walls, each chortle crawling under my skin like insects. You will join your friends soon, little one. They await. I could see them, faces creeping closer to the edge of the abyss, eyes wide and pleading, overlapping in a cacophony of misbegotten wails. Save us. Help us. Stop. I shouted, bitter tears blurring my vision. You're not them. They're trapped. They need to be free. The sincerity of my cry pierced through the fog of despair enveloping the room. As if in response, the shadows began to quiver, swirling dangerously with an ancient rage. Are they? Or are they reveling in a new existence, feeding upon the strength of the living? The beast's face twisted in a grotesque smile, the truth of its words worming into my mind like a parasite. What if they wish for this new life, away from the troubles of your world? No. I shouted hoarsely, desperate to drown out its voice. The temptation grew, fangs, gnawing at the edges of my sanity, whispering seductively that perhaps they were happy, liberated from their corporeal bonds. I shook my head violently. I wouldn't allow it to take root. They want to be free. You're lying. The shadow melded into a form of twisted confusion, and for an instant, the anguished faces flickered. But in the heartbeat that followed, their expressions twisted again with an urgency, a warning. Their voices crescendoed into a chilling harmony. Don't listen. Don't listen. In a sudden burst of defiance, I sprang forward, arms flailing wildly as I swung the knife again. And again, desperation morphing each movement into a primal dance against the darkness. The shuddering shadow creature recoiled, tangles of darkness cracking like glass around it. With a guttural roar, it lurched away as the air shimmered, bridging the gaping void that separated me from the pit of lost souls, but in doing so, I felt the ground tremble violently, like thunder rumbling beneath an angry sky. The darkness recoiled from me, but something was shifting within the shadowy mass, a tectonic fracture that hinted at the chaos lurking beneath. Through the trembling shadows, something began to rise, harbinger to a new horror that awaited. Join us, the section of darkness hissing behind the beast surged forth, a tide of despair so overwhelming that I could hardly breathe. Join us, child. And as the last vestiges of light faded, I understood that even if I managed to escape this creature, something much worse was beginning to claw its way into our world, a hungry darkness that would not be denied. Just as I steadied myself, steeling my resolve, a piercing cry tore through the air, a shout of warning. Don't look behind you. But it was too late. My instincts betrayed me as I turned, drawn to the sound, and locked eyes with what emerged from the shadows, a dark figure, impossibly wide, horridly familiar, its ill-defined outline creeping ever closer, taking the silhouettes of friends long gone. I screamed. But my voice was swallowed by the encroaching darkness, a fresh wave of terror crashing over me as I braced for the revelation that awaited, one that would change everything I thought I knew. The shadows pulsed, a malevolent tide shifting around me, as the figure advanced with an eerie grace, melding elements of familiarity and grotesque distortion. It slithered through the dim light, each tremor of its being sending ripples of nausea through me, as if the very air were tearing apart with despair. Those eyes, once bright with laughter and life, now simmered with a dark yearning that pierced the remnants of my sanity, chilling me to my core. "Help us," the figure crooned, voice dripping with a sickening sweetness that clung to the air. It was a face I recognized, one I had thought lost to the abyss. Megan, my childhood friend, her features contorted into a nightmarish mask. "We've found liberation, you can join us too. You don't have to suffer any longer." "No. You're not her," I shouted, a ball of terror and confusion clenching tighter within my chest. Behind her, shadows churned, grotesque shapes writhing in the void, each one could be a friend, a family member trapped, twisted by the very curse that had engulfed this place. Their wails merged into a haunting symphony echoing through the darkness. "Free us! Free us! Join us!" They reached out with feeble hands, skeletal fingers straining against the elastic grip of the shadows, clawing at the air between us, as if their tether to this realm was waning. "Don't you see?" Megan continued, tilting her head with disquieting affection, strands of darkness snaking around her like embrace. "We are not bound by your limitations anymore. We are beyond. You can be free of your pain. Just come, and you'll never hurt again." Everything twisted in my world as doubt clawed at me. The memories flooded back, the shared laughter, the dreams of childhood, the innocence of youth, each moment writhing, morphing into a suffocating noose that threatened to pull me under. I was standing on the precipice of despair, teetering between what I felt and what I knew to be true. "No. You're lying." I yelled again, but the words felt hollow, as if they were being swallowed by the very shadows that had given rise to this torment. But deep inside, amidst the fear and the memories, an ember of wrath ignited. "I want to become like you. I want to abandon my life." This declaration echoed unnaturally in the fevered silence, setting off a tremor among the shadows. The faces, once familiar, twisted grotesquely, anger and sadness mingling into a feral mask of hunger. "You will join us, one way or another." Megan's voice fractured, blending into a snarling chorus. With each second, the darkness lurched closer, threatening to engulf me whole. I could feel the shadows, like tendrils of cold smoke, curling around my ankles, creeping upwards as they snickered and twirled, morphed into words that flickered behind my eyes. Let go. The ground beneath me quivered again, fissures sprawling across the surface, pulling the essence of this realm apart like tissue paper. I gripped the knife tightly, trembling with rage and sorrow, searching for any potential means of escape. I could hear the distant whisper of frantic memories wounding my resolve. "We are lost, you must find us." And then, as if in orchestrated disarray, the air thickened, pregnant with something sinister, something that slithered beneath my skin and churned my stomach into knots. From the cracks in the ground, shadows burst forth like geysers of darkness, grotesque realisms draped in despair. They reached for me with nothing more than a wave of empty intent, a hollow promise laced with mockery. That I stepped back, horrified, but stumbled and fell. The knife clattered from my grasp, sliding across the broken, jagged ground. I scrambled for it, desperately lunging forward, but an icy hand wrapped around my wrist, strong, pulsing with the chill of oblivion. The shadows dragged me closer to the gaping maw of the being that had masqueraded as Megan, its twisted features sharpening, revealing a wretched smile far too wide. "Join us," it lured softly, echoes of lost laughter spilling from tortured lips. Then, from the depths of the noxious void, a howl erupted, deep and resonant, sprawling over everything, underscoring a shift more profound than I could comprehend. It was not just an echo of the lost, it was an awakening. The darkness lifted, revealing an expanse of horrified gazes, new shapes unfurling from within the shadows, awakening with rage at the intrusion, clinging to this world with unyielding fury. Terror seized me as I recoiled, witnessing what emerged: pale limbs stretching beyond human capacity, monstrous silhouettes that merged and twisted into one pulsating entity, hungry eyes honing in on my soul. "Run," whispered a familiar voice, almost drowned by the cacophony of despair. But as I turned, my heart sank into the depths of my stomach. The shadows had formed a united front, suffocating hope. Run! They're coming for you. And the moment I hesitated, time fractured around me, unveiling new horrors clawing their way into existence, their unbroken howl promising nothing less than obliteration. I didn't hesitate anymore, panic surged through me with burning intensity. I broke from the grasp of the shadows, moved with an urgency I had never known, but as I fled into the unpredictable depths of darker corners, I could feel them hungry whispers clawing at my back. The final, horrifying revelation seeped through the darkness: I was not the only one trying to escape this realm. As the veil of shadows lifted yet again, I realized too late whatever emerged from that yawning void had begun to hunt. The air became thick as I raced through the disintegrating remnants of my reality, the world around me shifting and unraveling with each hurried step. Shadows clamored hungrily at my heels, their whispered pleas evolving into a maddening symphony of desire and rage. With every labored breath, their concert deepened, a monstrous cacophony that scraped mercilessly against my mind that I stumbled forward, desperately pushing through a curtain of gloom that threatened to swallow me whole. The jagged remnants of buildings loomed like phantoms, their walls twisted in grotesque shapes, reflecting a world that was both familiar and horrifically alien. Windows shattered like the echo of distant screams, and the ground rippled beneath me as if it were alive, pulsating with an insatiable hunger. In that chaotic spiral, I turned a corner, hoping to escape the maleficent tendrils that pursued me, but what met my eyes wasn't salvation. A figure stood against the shadows, silhouetted amid the chaos. The shadows hesitated, coiling back as if sensing the presence of something more potent than fear. "Help!" I shouted, voice cracking, desperation tangling with the despair swirling around me. My heart raced as the figure stepped closer, emerging from the darkness in a slow, deliberate manner. It was a man, or what once might have been a man. His eyes glinted with an unnatural light, a sickly glow that pierced the encroaching void. "Where is she?" I gasped, choking on the heavy, acrid air. "Do you believe in shadows?" He replied, his voice deep and resonant, echoing as if it belonged to the very fabric of the darkness around us. "Do you understand what they desire?" "No. I need to find her." My pleas were raw, desperate. The rush of flight clawed at my mind, but the specter before me held me captive, unwavering. "Those you seek can be so much more than lost souls," he said, his eyes narrowing. "You must decide. To run is to deny the truth." "Truth?" I spat, my anger flaring against the encroaching despair. "They're trapped. This darkness wants to consume us." "Exactly," he said, the faintest smile curling his lips. "But once the veil is lifted, what they seek may not be what you want. They have transformed. They crave dominion over their anguish, a chance to feel again, even if it means tearing you apart." The shadows bobbed around him like eager children, still and unwavering. He commanded them, dark sentinels that craved the taste of something vital. My heart wound tighter, for the eerie tranquility of his demeanor threatened to shatter my sanity. "Are you not tired of pain?" he asked, stepping closer, shadows swirling around his feet like tendrils of smoke, caressing the earth like a lover returned from the grave. "Join me. Leave all of this behind." "No." My voice quaked, the truth blaring in my mind. This was not a man, but a vessel of darkness, a harbinger pulling at the threads of my resolve. "I refuse." In horror, I turned to flee again, but the shadows lunged with newfound ferocity, their reach extending beyond the confines of my mind. They surged around me, coiling up my legs with the chilling caress of abandoned souls, dragging at my core, lacing through my anger and despair. A baby's cry shattered the galaxy of my thoughts, emanating from deep within the darkness, a cry that pierced through despair and reverberated into my heart. I froze, feeling it grip my consciousness, an emotion more potent than terror. "Megan!" I screamed, the name bursting from my lips as if it could shatter the bindings around me. The gaping maw of the shadows trembled, and for a moment, all was still. I swiveled wildly, the voice of my friend echoing like a distant echo, as if she stood on the precipice, trapped within the very essence of the voices I wished to defy. "Help me!" The faint, distorted echo called. My heart thudded in disbelief and anguish. She was somewhere near, somewhere beyond the veil, but then, from the corner of my eye, I saw something shift, something massive and featureless, feeding on despair itself. Something heralding from the depths, batting away the shadows like playthings, its monstrous form fueling a renewed panic inside of me. I spun around, dread spiraling, the world shrinking as I caught a glimpse of its eyes roiling black pits, insatiable and hungry. It was coming for me, emerging hungrily from an eternal abyss, with no thought left to rationality. I bolted, but the shadows twisted, wrapping around my limbs with greedy fervor. With the soft cries of Megan echoing in my ears, I forced a denial of this newfound reality, plunging deeper into the labyrinthine horrors of the descending nightmarish realm, and then I felt at the sharp, sickening pull of something grasping at the depths of my soul, eager to root itself deeply, to take hold. The last remnants of my sanity, like thin threads, began to unravel beneath the onslaught of desperation and darkness that I was not alone. They were awakening, the old and new forces colliding in wretched haste, turning despair into chaos. I had only moments left. The shadows had their plans, they had grown tired of waiting. Run! Came the distorted echoes of my friend, haunting and pleading, blending into the frightful reverberations of the encroaching horror. But I faltered. A darkness deeper than anything I had known gripped the air like a heavy fog, and the looming presence of an unspeakable creature bore down upon me. I in the heart of the impending dark, I understood this was not the end. Rather, it was the beginning, and I was not escaping alone. Whatever emerged from the bowels of despair was preparing to rise with me in its grasp. The shadows clawed tighter, snaking around my ankles, dragging me toward the forbidden depths, toward the monstrosity that loomed within the encroaching darkness. Panic clawed at my throat, my breath quickening as I struggled against the binding chains of despair, every heartbeat a countdown to my inevitable demise. The baby's cry echoed in my mind, amplifying my desperation to find Megan, to reclaim that lost spark of hope. Help her! Something primal snapped within me, igniting a flicker of defiance. I fought against the shadows, the chilling cold that seeped into my very bones, pushing against the inexorable pull with every ounce of strength I had left. The echoes of the darkness whispered malice and promises, coaxing me to give in, to let the void consume my fears, to surrender willingly to the agonizing embrace of despair. Then, as if responding to my flickering resolve, the shadows coalesced into a figure, a grotesque mockery of humanity. It slithered closer, eyes burning with an unholy hunger, reflecting the shattered shards of my own terror. The man-thing grinned, stretching its mouth impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth that seemed meant for feasting on souls. "Why fight, little lamb?" it hissed, its voice sliding across my skin like ice. "They simply want to play." In that moment, I glared into the depths of its gaze, seeking a connection to the humanity that might remain within. But there was nothing, no glimmer of hope, only an insatiable void, filled with the echoes of lost hopes and latent desires. My veins ran cold as I felt a deeper terror seep into my thoughts, a bated breath that coaxed me into submission. "No. I won't let you." I screamed, clawing at the shadows, an embodiment of my own fury as I twisted away. With one last lurch, I broke free at least from the immediate grip of the entity, but the shadows pulsed and roared, angry, hungry, and desperate, lungs burning. I raced through the agonizing symphony. The cries of the damned propelled me forward, sustaining my momentum as I ran past crumbling walls and distorted edifices. Each breath caught in my throat, the walls themselves twisted, as if they could pull me back into their embrace at any moment. "Megan!" I bellowed, my voice echoing in the claustrophobic darkness, clutching to the faint hope that her voice would answer, that her visage would emerge from the ether. And then it came, the faint whisper of her name, a soft plea calling through the dissonance, sharp as a blade forged in burning agony. "Help me please." My heart twisted violently. I wasn't far. I could sense it. Yet, the shadows surged, crawling over the ground with ravenous intent, eager to reclaim me. Each footfall felt heavier, pulling me into their depths, mocking my efforts. "Turn back, little lamb," the creature rasped from behind me, its voice slithering through the air like smoke. You cannot save her, you can only join her. With terror gripping me, I rounded a corner and found a thick fog coiling around a collapsed section of a once grand building. The fog pulsated as if it were alive, teeming with the whispers of those who had been consumed. I felt the ground thrumming beneath me, a heartbeat that mirrored my own dread. There was something significant here, something that gnawed at the edges of my mind that I pressed forward, sneaking through the mire, until I stumbled into a small clearing, a strangled breath escaping my lips as I caught sight of the impossible, a mirror-like boundary flickering in the haze, a veil glistening with the essence of what lay beyond. Within its depths, I glimpsed shadows writhing in agony, lamenting their fate, yet mingled within those shadows was a glimmer of light, faint as a dying star. Megan! The cry tore from me again, desperation clawing at my throat. I'm here. But the moment was fleeting, for that glimmer was rapidly snuffed out, devoured by the multiplying shadows just beyond the veil. In a frenzy, I reached forward, my fingertips grazing the rippling surface, the darkness within grabbing hold of my will. And then, the sensation shifted, a sickly dread. Coursing, wrapping around my wrist like iron chains. Something pulled at me from the other side, a violent jolt lurching through me, and in that second, I felt the weight of the creature swarm around me anew. Join us, they whispered in eerie unison, their voices merging into a chilling harmony. Become one with the darkness. We will share in your sorrows. With raw instinct, I pulled back, my arms straining against their grip, but something popped, there was a flash of light, a scream of terror tearing through the shadows as the veil thrummed with life. The darkness screamed, recoiling as it ripped apart, and in that brief fracture, I saw Megan's face, distorted with anguish and despair, her eyes wide, searching my own desperately. But before I could reach her, the shadows surged back, a mass of fury and pain, swallowing her light whole and shattering the mirror of hope I so foolishly believed in. The ground heaved, cracking open beneath my feet, an abyss yawning beneath me, and as I teetered on the edge, the shadows pounced, pulling me into their unfathomable depths. Chaos erupted, my scream fading into the cacophony of cries and sobs that echoed through the fabric of the darkness. They rushed around me, hungry, pulling me toward the other side where no light remained. Then, a sudden quiet struck, an expectant hush, and from the depths of despair a voice echoed, dripping with delight and malevolence. Welcome home. As pair of luminous eyes emerged from the swirling mass, I realized too late what I was truly facing, the shadowy depths of my own making. The realization gripped my heart like a vice, whispering that I had unleashed only the beginning of an ancient darkness waiting to devour everything I held dear. The world around me peeled away, fading into an emptiness where even sound seemed to recoil. It was a silence laced with malevolence, thick and suffocating, pressing against my chest. I could still feel the aftershocks of my last moments of defiance vibrating through my bones, a reminder of both what I had lost and the terror that now loomed ahead. Welcome home, the voice crooned again, twisted into a sickening lullaby that sent chills rippling across my skin. The glowing eyes floated before me, anchoring me to the spiral of nothingness. They flickered with an insatiable hunger, drawing closer, the shadows swirling in a dance of glee at my presence, my weakness that I took a hesitant step back, but the ground crumbled beneath my feet, demanding my surrender. Dread consumed my thoughts, consuming all rationality, until I was anchored only in fear. With every movement, I felt the darkness pulsating and shifting, as if it were breathing, alive, eager for my collapse. Then came a piercing laughter, echoing off the unimaginable walls of void surrounding me. You think you can escape? This realm thrives on your fear, your failures. It wants you, needs you. Instinct screamed for me to flee, but the fetid breath of terror clung to my senses, muddling my thoughts. Something brushed my ankle and my heart raced as dread washed over me again, swirling like a storm within my mind. The shadows morphed and twisted further, weaving spectral forms that reached for me like hands transformed into elongated claws. They laughed, taunting me with Megan's name. Their voices collected and echoed, a chorus of the damned, sending waves of despair through my trembling heart. Did you come to save her? They teased, their words dripping with malice. Or merely to join her in the depths of despair? Their laughter rang out, but within its depths, I caught a glimpse of Megan again, her face, pale and ghostly, floating in the murky depths of the fog. Tears streamed down her cheeks, fear reflecting in her eyes as she mouthed words I couldn't hear over the chaos thrumming in my ears. I felt ripped apart, the gaping abyss of helplessness threatening to swallow every piece of me. "No. I won't leave you," I shouted, desperation igniting a flicker of defiance. I lunged toward the figure, but the shadows grew thick, interlocking and suffocating. I could only grasp at fragments of light that flickered in and out, the very essence of my hope slipping through my fingers. Suddenly, the ground trembled violently, and the laughter of the shadows transformed into furious roars, like beasts unsated. Like a violent tide, they surged forward and pulled me from my spot, ripping me away from my pursuit of Megan. "Come, embrace what you truly are," hissed the voice, seductive and sinister, a melodic murmur that coiled deep within me. I felt as if they were uncovering layers of my very soul, taunting me to succumb to the darkness that had always lurked beneath the surface. That I was yanked forward, and then the perspective shifted, and I was tumbling, spinning through a chasm that had no end, the shadows morphing around me into grotesque visages contorted in agony. In the spiraling mass of despair, they whispered secrets of my past, fears I buried deep. Every mistake, every failure flickered before my eyes as if written in blood on the walls of reality. "You will learn. You cannot escape yourself." And then, with an explosive force, I slammed into an expanse of cold earth, my chest heaving as I lay gasping for breath, dazed but aware. The ground surrounding me shimmered eerily, rows of graves stretching endlessly, each marker etched with names I had once known. A horror gripped me as I stumbled to my feet, my heart racing, eyes scanning the desolation. "Megan!" I called desperately. But the silence that followed was heavier than before, echoing through the bitter air, devoid of hope. Suddenly, a familiar wail pierced through the stillness, a genuine, heart-wrenching cry. The sound reverberated within me, igniting raw panic. It was her voice. "Megan!" I screamed again, my voice fractured and raw. I darted down a narrow path, my feet pounding against the chilling ground, desperate to reach the source. The shadows shifted ominously, whispering sweet deceptions and dark temptations, but I could taste her presence growing stronger, undeniable. I rounded a corner, blood roaring in my ears, and halted. Before me, a figure loomed, a ghastly silhouette standing before a gravestone that pulsed with dark remnants of memories and life once lived. There, on the gravestone, I could barely make out a name under the accumulation of grime. "Megan, what have you done?" The words ripped from my throat, mingling with horror and rage as the figure turned slowly, pulling away the veil of shadow. It was her, yet she was not the Megan I remembered. Her eyes burned with a madness that echoed the torment of the abyss. "I've embraced it," she whispered, her voice tinged with something unfathomably dark. "And soon, so will you." As her mouth cracked into a smile, revealing teeth stained with darkness, the shadows coiling around me surged forward, tightening their grip once more. I felt myself sinking, pulled toward her, toward the grave that beckoned like a siren of despair. The ground rumbled violently, shaking the very core of my being, and just as I thought I would be consumed, Megan's eyes flickered. Was it a plea? Or a promise of what was to come? I stood at the precipice of either salvation or damnation, and all hell broke loose as the shadows roared, collapsing in on me, and I realized I was not merely fighting for her, I was fighting for my very soul's existence, and the decaying truth of what lay beyond threatened to consume us both in an eternal waltz of darkness. As the shadows enveloped me, the last thing I saw was her twisted grin, a reflection of my own terror, and then, everything dissolved into a blinding void, a sense of finality swallowing every shred of hope I had left. The silence that followed was deafening, stretching across a void darker than anything I could comprehend. I could feel the whispers resonating within, a menacing chorus echoing as I stared into the abyss of what lay beyond. My consciousness flickered between awareness and oblivion, with the weight of time suspended in that chilling expanse. I was lost, with long-forgotten memories drifting through my mind, ensnaring me in a web of despair. As I hung in that oppressive nothingness, the ethereal pull of familiarity washed over me like a wave. Images rose unbidden, flashes of laughter-filled afternoons, the warmth of sunlight filtering through leaves, the sound of Megan's voice weaving dreams of a future naive to the darkness we now faced. But those moments felt tainted, stained with the bitterness of loss, echoing somewhere far away. The murmurs within the shadows changed, morphing into a distinct rhythm that clawed at the remnants of my sanity. Each whisper seemed to pulse with an insidious craving, a force that demanded my attention, beckoning me into its depths. Reclaim, reconnect, they implored in sweet unison, seductive and malicious. Suddenly, the shadows twisted, unraveling the fabric of the dark around me, and through the inky haze, I saw it a glimmer of light, brilliant yet ghostly, almost too bright for this realm. My heart raced, desperation clawing up my throat as I surged toward it, propelled by sheer instinct. It echoed with warmth, a fleeting reminder of hope that had nearly faded, but just as I reached that flickering beacon, the shadows coiled, wrought in pain and fury. They lashed out, writhing against my ankles, pulling me back as the light dimmed, distorted by a darkness that refused to relent. "Join us!" they cried, their voices mingling into a grotesque song. In that moment, clarity surged through my veins. I had witnessed the horrors lurking in this realm before, friendship twisted into betrayal, laughter reduced to madness, life entangled in fear. I understood that what enveloped me wasn't just a malevolent force seeking to snuff out the light of hope. It was a reflection of my own fears, my failures embodied in shadows that longed to consume. Something deep within me roared a fervent defiance. I would not surrender. I pulled free from the grasp of the abyss, fighting against the darkness that demanded my submission. Each movement felt monumental, like trying to swim against a relentless current. The shadows churned, hissing in rage, no longer hunting for a willing soul, but battling against my will to live. With every heartbeat the shadows tightened their hold, and from within their depths, I could see silhouettes emerging, familiar yet alien faces lost to the darkness, rising in twisted shapes, flickering like memories from a time before. "You belong with us," they murmured, echoing every lingering doubt I dechained within. "Megan!" I screamed, thrusting through the thrumming void, breaking free from the agonizing dread clawing at my insides. "You can't hear me. I'm still here." I felt myself spiraling again, back to the brink of the pit I had stumbled into, pulled by the specters clinging to my very essence. Then, a terrible truth unfurled itself within the dark. The flickering light in the distance wasn't merely a beacon of hope, it was a deception. As shadows morphed into monstrous shapes around me, I realized that the silhouettes bore a resemblance to those I had known, friends, family, faces twisted in anguish, their mouths moving in silent screams of torment, tethered to me through the cursed fabric of fate. They hadn't been lost, they had willingly joined the abyss. My stomach nodded as the horrifying revelation coursed through me. There in that hellish expanse, I saw it clearly, Megan was just one among many, a source of light that had flickered out, now ready to consume whoever dared delve into the darkness. I locked eyes with her form, twisted but distinct, yearning for release and yet thirsting for companionship in that monstrous resurrection. "Help us!" Her voice rang out again, haunting like the lingering echo of a fading bell, a parallel of grief dancing along the edges of my resolve. Tears stung my eyes, and doubt crept back. What if she didn't want to escape? What if she had embraced this existence, and I, in my fight, was the one pulling her away? It grew clearer as I faced the reality of her predicament with a heavy heart. This wasn't merely about survival. It was an unending cycle, an ongoing battle. Perhaps they were right, perhaps I did belong, teetering on the edge of despair, drawn to the abyss that sought companionship in darkness. What if I, too, had longed for reprieve from the burdens of existence? No. I screamed, wrestling against the seductive pull of shadows, clawing against layers of truth threatening to drown me. I shook my head violently, casting away the memories, the guilt, the sorrow. I would not give in, I would not succumb. With that thought ignited inside me, the shadows recoiled, hissing in displeasure, thrashing against the walls of my spirit as they pulsed with sinister ferocity. Fear bloomed within their depths, mingling with fury. "Running is futile. You belong to me now." A voice boomed, echoing with unrelenting hunger, ricocheting off the ether surrounding us, drawing me deep into its embrace. but as I strained against the grips of despair, the last flicker of hope surged forward like a wildfire, consuming the despair that threatened to snuff me out altogether. The pulsating light grew brighter, I could feel the warmth, the love, the essence of what had once tied me to my friends, filling me with purpose. Megan! I bellowed once more, refusing to be consumed. I would reach her, see her spirit set free, and in a single, sweeping motion, I plunged my hands into the rushing shadows enveloping me, determined to fight against the tide threatening to engulf me alive. The darkness hissed, pulling tighter like a clawing beast, but I pushed back harder, channeling every ounce of my spirit against the darkness. Join us, came the dreadful chorus echoing all around, but I fought against their haunting whispers, drowning them with my own heart. That in the slick chasm of terror, shadows screamed, but a crack of light pierced through the veil, the glimmer illuminating the faces of the lost, the souls caught in the web of despair, including Megan S. Help me! She cried, clearer now, her voice trembling with a heart that was still, if only just, alive. Time collapsed around me as I forced myself to break through. The shadows pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat as the light surged, intertwining with the darkness and exposing their core. And then it all erupted, a blinding explosion of warm beings emerging from the depths of despair, tearing through with a brilliant crescendo. You are not alone. I bellowed, the volume of my spirit echoing deep within. I drew strength from the connections I had forged, from memories not lost but waiting patiently to be rekindled. And with that surge, I broke through, feeling the grip of despair peel away, glimpses of shadows dissipated, the mass of anguish unraveling, as the faces emerged from that suffocating darkness. The nameless shades, twisted and contorted by despair, fragmented into beams of light. Megan among them, her expression transformed from one of desperation to hope as warmth radiated from her being. And with one fierce motion, we leapt into the light, breaking free of the shadows that had sought to claim us. Together, we emerged into a reality anew, pushing forth the darkness that had taunted, beckoned, and clawed at our souls. But as I lunged into the brightness, flickering at the edge of real space, a chilling whisper licked my ear, echoing as shadows crawled once again at the fringes of what I dared to leave behind. You may have escaped, but the shadows never forget. With a jolt, I found myself back in my living room, breath ragged, heart pounding. Light flickered, barely illuminating the confines, but outside, I saw the trees swaying, living, shifting. I knew then with grueling certainty, darkness lurked beyond every corner, waiting patiently for my return. And deep within, lurking under the surface of the flickering light, the shadows whispered still, their call lingering, just as it always had, reminding me, the shadows never forget.